Good morning. If you are here with us Sunday morning on Facebook Live or any of our streaming platforms, welcome. And if you are watching a recording of this service later in the week, we are glad and greetings. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalists of Transylvania County. I am the Reverend Bob Rangillian, the settled minister of this congregation, and I thank you for joining us today. I have a few announcements. I'll highlight what you may have seen in newsletters recently. Our congregational meeting is today, online, after the service. We hope members were able to bring or mail their ballots to UUTC by this morning. The lobby is open to receive ballots. If you are a member and you lost your ballot, you can find it on the board page or the email link that was sent to you this week, and you can come and sneak in and stick it in the box in the lobby. I also want to remind you that our outdoor safe distance Tuesday picnics continue outdoors. It's called Fellowship on the Green. It's for anyone who wishes to come with their mask and a packed lunch to sit and chat with others around the circle of chairs and picnic tables between 11:30 and 1:30. We'll now have Carol Moore tell us about Pisgah Legal Services, the special collection for this month of May.
Good morning. I'm Carol Moore, and I've been a member of this congregation since 2011. I'm here to talk to you this morning about May's charitable giving agency, which is Pisgah Legal Services. Pisgah Legal Services is a charity which I personally fully support. When I represented the public schools in Pitt County, North Carolina, before I retired, I worked closely with legal services, mostly concerning homeless children in the county. I even became close friends with one of their attorneys. We went tent camping on one of the Outer Banks, which is one of the good memories I have from that period. I came to fully respect the work of legal services and am pleased that Pisgah Legal is UUTC's designated agency for May. Legal services seek justice for those for whom no other agency can help. It tries to secure safety from domestic violence, to stop unfair evictions, to save homes from foreclosures, to keep children safe from abuse, to find access to affordable health care, and to help immigrants navigate the law, among other services. Nearly 3/4 of low-income households in the United States experienced a civil legal problem in pre-COVID years. In 2019, Pisgah legal staff were assisted by more than 14,000 volunteer hours. Donations like ours provided 28% of its $5.2 million budget. With such volunteers and funds, Pisgah Legal operated 13 legal programs, including in the areas of children's law, consumer law, elder law, homelessness prevention, veterans law, immigrant justice, and a mountain area legal hotline. Its client benefits were quantifiable at $24.6 million. That is a 4-to-1 return on our investment in them. The pandemic has increased the need for Pisgah legal services. Please be as generous as you can in supporting this month's designated UUTC charity. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. And thank you for joining us in this sacred space during these troubled times from the safety of your home in a community consecrated by our presence and our commitment. We are a welcoming and inclusive congregation. We are inviting your participation and welcome you whoever you are, without regard to your race, color, age, sex, gender, orientation, politics, or abilities. We require no creed or particular religious belief, asking only that you bring your goodwill and an open heart. Our mission is to support individual spiritual journeys and to promote social, economic, and environmental justice. To any guests or newcomers we have watching with us today, thank you for taking a chance and taking the time to find us online and to join us for this worship. And to our members and friends, please continue to use the chat to communicate with each other, to reconnect as the UUTC family, and to express your appreciation. Our call to worship is The Rose, performed by Janice Cannon and Elaine Shaver, accompanied by Carlene Reagan. Please relax and let the music lead you into the spirit of worship. So beautiful. Our opening words this morning are from the Reverend Lynn Cox. They are a leader in the interim ministry chapter of the Unitarian Universalist Ministers Association and has served congregations in transition outside the Baltimore area. In fact, Lynn was the interim minister who followed me after my long ministry in York, Pennsylvania a few years ago. I will note that this was written for a worship service with a Wizard of Oz theme. Come, you accidental pilgrims, you who find yourself on a journey of surprise and wonder. Come, you who emerge into this place as an act of liberation. Come, you who seek a life of mindfulness and a place to test your thoughts. Come, you who bring hearts of all kinds, heavy hearts, rusty hearts, hearts broken open in revelation, hearts full of love to share. Come, you who seek courage, and you who have more courage than you realize. Come, you who stand behind the curtain, gathering up the resources to claim your truth. Come, you who have been in a bubble, you who are poised for transformation. We begin our story again, gathering courage, love, mindfulness, and a sense of purpose. We gather as people of all ages, of different abilities, different backgrounds, and different perspectives. We share a covenant, a direction for our shared journey, and a commitment to encourage and challenge one another to spiritual growth. This path will ask much from us. Let us move forward with love. Let us move forward with appreciation for one another. Let us move forward knowing we are not alone. Whoever you are, whatever your gifts, you are welcome to join this journey. I will now light our chalice and then read the words of Eric Williams. In the beginning, there was light, infinite and expansive, flowing out from an unseen center. Throughout creation, there is light from a steady sun, the glowing moon, the flashing meteor, the twinkling stars, and the auroras dancing in the northern skies. Within each part of creation, there is light, slowed down and held close by every cell and molecule, by each atom and element. Within you, there is light, the same light as the source, the same radiance that is in all creatures. May this small flame be a constant reminder for you of your true nature and your kinship with all beings. Please join us in our first hymn of the morning, number 1068, Rising Green. The words will appear on your screen.
My blood doth rise in the roots of yon oak, her sap doth run in my veins, boundless my soul like the open sky, where the stars forever have lain. Will the stars, will the stars
Now comes the time in our service when we have the chance to share our joys and sorrows. We believe that joys are magnified, worries reduced, and grief eased by the sharing of them in this beloved community. I invite those who are watching this on Sunday morning to participate by typing any joys and sorrows you would like to share in the comments of the streaming platform you are using. I won't be able to see them, but I will include a candle for them at the end. I light a candle for those whose work allows us to live our lives easier and safer, those on our front lines who have been asked again and again to be heroes in healthcare, essential services, and education. May this light bring comfort to those who serve. I light a candle of gratitude for those who continue to research and administer vaccines, their efforts and commitment to bring new hope, a gift we have been offered after the past year of fear. May this light bring honor to those who serve the new fight against COVID-19. I light a candle of gratitude for those who have committed themselves to stand on the side of justice, speaking out and taking action, and advocating for those who have been denied their rights. May this light bring courage to those who speak up. I light a candle for the people of India suffering during the deadly wave of COVID-19, persevering and grieving. I read now the chalice lighting words highlighted this month for Unitarian Universalists around the world, the ones they chose, offered by Dr. Kular Mukim from the Unitarian Union of Northeast India. I cannot read the original Kasi, but the English translation that was provided. Dear divine source of creation and of all enlightenment, may this candle be lighted in your wonderful vastness to help us stay grounded in your eternal light and righteousness. We gratefully bow down to you for everything within and around us that has shaped our individual lives, and as a spiritual community, may our souls find purpose, meaning, and peace as we evolve in our thought, work, and journey here, now, and beyond. I light a candle for those suffering from violence around the globe, in particular the Israeli-Gaza conflict. I light a candle for those prayers lifted up in the chat box by those at home. We hold them in our hearts. This light is burning here at UUTC for all these things, even as we cannot be with each other. And finally, I light a candle for any care or any hope that you are not yet ready to share. May this light, kindled by all our hearts, be a torch you can carry forward, knowing that we hold you in our hearts. Please hold these candles in your heart as we listen to Janice and Elaine's rendition of Alleluia, accompanied by Charlene Reagan.
Alleluia, alleluia.
The reading that I have to share this morning was one suggested in the Soul Matters Sharing Circle. Those of you who get our Soul Matters packets for monthly study, I also try to get in on calls when I can with other colleagues from congregations using Soul Matters, and I really appreciate the sharing of different parts. This is a story rather than a reading. It happens to be from somebody I know, the Reverend Christina Leone Tracy. Many years ago when I was on sabbatical, I went to be on staff of the Meadville Lombard Theological School, our Unitarian Universalist school in Chicago, where I was minister in residence, and Christina was just starting her journey in training for ministry, and now, of course, has many years of experience. So this is a story about a person with a story about stories, if you will. Once upon a time, there was a man with a story. This wasn't any old once upon a time story, not one you could find on a bookshelf or hear around the campfire. This was his story and no one else's. This story had been carefully crafted. It began before he was born, and this story told of his loves and fears, his dreams realized, and his dreams yet to come. This story was complete. It told his whole life, including those bits that still existed in his imagination. In fact, this story was so complete, and he was so happy with his story, that he carried it around to make sure that it was safe. It was somewhat bulky and unwieldy, but he didn't mind. It was his story. The thing about this story was it was fragile, made up of many different pieces and held together by only his own imagination. He was worried it might break apart at any minute. And so he grew more and more protective of his story. He held it even closer. As he went about his life, he checked on the story to make sure he was following it very correctly. He avoided adventure and unknowns because, well, they might break his story. And then one day, the inevitable happened. Without warning, his story broke. It was unforeseen, and he hadn't done anything wrong at all, but there it was, laying in 1,000 shattered pieces on the ground, with the sunlight glinting off the bits of story he had so carefully protected all those years. He was heartbroken. And since his story hadn't said, put the pieces back together, he was at a loss. What now? So he sat down next to the piles of pieces and he cried. A while later, maybe it was minutes, maybe it was hours, a group of people came out of the nearby building and saw him sitting on the sidewalk, surrounded by a pile of broken pieces, clearly in need of help. What happened here? A woman asked. My story, it's gone. I worked so hard to protect it, to keep it from harm, to follow it. Now it's gone. Gone, he wailed. Is this the story here? A man said. Yes, look at it. There's nothing left of it. It looks like it's here, not gone, said a child. Ooh, we just have to put it back together. Put it back together? There is no way. You don't even know what it looked like. How will you put it back together if you don't even know me? The child was tenacious. Don't worry. With all of us here to help, we'll put it back together in a way that you would never even expect. You never know. It might be more beautiful than before. And so they swept up the pieces of this man's story carefully and went together into the building from which they had emerged and poured him some hot coffee and sang a song he had never heard before, something about having your heart in a holy place. The song was encouraging and the coffee was warm, and he began to feel hope again that his story could be put back together again. And it took a long time. Maybe it was days, maybe it was years, but they got it all back together. And they added new parts, and some old parts, well, just didn't fit anymore. But that was okay. The child had been right. It was, in fact, more beautiful than before. And this time the story was held together not only by his imagination, but the imagination and support of an entire community. It wasn't nearly so fragile. And it even allowed for adventure. Thank you for listening to the story. So my sermon this morning is How Story Matters. And I suggested that from our songs, movies, plays, biographies, fiction at the library, all of this shows our need for sharing stories, hearing stories, imagining ourselves in the characters' shoes, and learning about each other and ourselves. Now, I have to say in advance, the events and characters depicted in this motion picture are fictitious. Any similarity to actual persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. For indeed, there is absolutely nothing of value that doesn't come with that statement. Because that statement says, we have imagination. We have the ability to shape and to see. So when they put that at the very end of the movies, if you ever make it to the end of the credits or your streaming service doesn't whisk away the credits so that it can show you what's next, then you're reminded day after day about the importance of stories. In some ways, our stories are fictitious. In some ways, the ones that we most want to be part of are purely coincidental in the way we might imagine ourselves or others meeting somehow the threads of that story in their authenticity. For me, the idea that story is just something that so matters brings me back to the understanding of self that comes from hearing again and again the way in which we are birthed into story. Did your family of origin ever tell you about the time when you were little, when this happened? I repeat the story of my son taking out his sandwich on the beach on a beautiful sunny day in the breezes and hearing the waves coming against the shore ahead of us further down the sand, and taking out his sandwich and lifting it up, and the seagull swooping down and taking it from him. I remember the stories of when I was little, held in my mother's arms before my memories were fitting into a memory system that I could carry with me, and having that repeated later. Ah, when you were young, I held you in my arms, and we would sit in a certain place and I would sing you songs. Or maybe you look back through an old photo album or family videos and you remember something of your past. it helps to have others around you lift up and validate that you have a story. Maybe they also talked with imagination of what they thought they saw budding in you. I had a young neighbor who would get into arguments with his mother. And his mother would say, you're going to grow up to be a lawyer someday. Predicting some story. I don't think that came true, but it was a way of positively asserting even what seemed in the moment like a negative characteristic of argumentativeness had a place. There was something consistent in my neighbor's actions. There was something that could grow into a place accepted and even being paid for arguing in the future. When we get to the point of having to articulate what our story is, we can remember the words of Maya Angelou from I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, a book that I have on my shelf, and I think this is a quote from our Soul Matters packet this month as well. There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. For sometimes in our families of origin, they don't get every piece. They don't get us. They don't see it. We open our mouths to say what's on the tip of our tongue and only to have our cacophony of our siblings all around us drowning us out. How have you been able to express what is inside you? I know as a teen sometimes, when I couldn't have that best friend, that elder relative, someone to listen to me for a moment as I tried to say out loud what I was trying to put together in my mind. The extroverted side of me needing to process something externally for me to then pack it back in internally to know myself. The agony of that then became something of, listening to music, listening to the radio, and I would try to record my favorite songs on a cassette tape player or spending my allowance to get a record and play it on the record player. Listening to songs and their story and realizing I could imagine in me something of the story being said in the songs. I don't know. Was it the blues that you listened to? Was it bubblegum rock? Was it a country song about a dog in a pickup truck and a heartbreak? Or finding the love of your life? Was it not a song at all, but a poem that leapt from the pages of an assignment you got in 8th grade? Was it a TV episode, the movie of the week? Perhaps something run as a public service announcement about kids who made a difference in the world. Somebody you could relate to. Maybe it was a movie. And you wanted to dress up as that character as much as possible and live out that story for its strength, for its beauty, for its hope, for somehow having a beginning, middle, and end even while you were just in the middle of figuring out the beginning of your own life. We pick stories that seem to relate or seem to teach us a moral or seem to help us along. I may have said this before to you, but I remember once learning in different cultures and the ways in which they look at American culture, and someone from Mexico saying, I understand you're confused about our songs that may be always about riches. But I think our songs are about something that we wish for, we imagine to be part of our story. And have you noticed that almost all the songs on the American wavelengths and the radio, they're all about wanting love? Perhaps we have cultural understandings of what we yearn for, the ways in which our society has made it very hard for us, or technology has separated us, or the many prejudices and systematic oppressions built in that make it so hard that we yearn for. We want to sing again and again of what we yearn for, to be a part of our story, or a part that was lost in our story. The story that I read from Christina Leon Tracy had something of a shattered life story, a metaphor perhaps for each one of us who's going along just fine and then finds death, destruction, rape, assault, accidents, injury, dismemberment, aging, and no longer able to carry on the story we had, being fired, being jilted, being dumped. At some point, a story has to transform, has to have the sense that we have a turning point. In the story that I read as the reading, the man sat and said, I have no instructions for this moment. My story did not tell me what to do when everything was shattered, when I was just sitting here, sad. And the people came round, and a little child said, we can put it back together. How many of us have turned to friends, trusted ones, random strangers to speak to have the sense that we're not alone. And in fact, we find that we are not alone in having shattered stories. For eons, there have been shattered stories where even our spirit is ripped from us. Read the Psalms, folks. Open the Psalms to read the hurt and the yearning, and then a turning to rely on something beyond ourselves, our fragile ego, something that connects us to life, the universe, and everything, something holy woven into a moment of rebuilding. This is going to be the eve of the Jewish holiday for the spring harvest. This is the eve of Shavuot. And I opened my Tanakh to the book of Ruth, the first chapter, as one of the readings that may be read at this harvest holiday. They broke into weeping again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law farewell, but Ruth clung to her. So she said, see, your sister-in-law's returned to her people and her gods. Follow your sister-in-law. But Ruth replied, do not urge me to leave you, to turn back and not to follow you, for wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people may be my people, your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. Thus and more may the Lord do to me, if anything but death parts me from you. When Naomi saw how determined that Ruth was to go with her, she ceased to argue with her. And the two went on until they reached Bethlehem. And the whole city buzzed from around them. And I skip ahead to the final verse of that first chapter, the final line. They arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. Now, Jewish congregations or homes, they may be reading that for a couple of reasons. One being the reminder of a difference in story of the acceptance of the Ten Commandments. A story instead of Ruth saying, "My God shall be your God," or "Your God shall be my God," a choosing to follow the Israelites' God. Changing from her culture, ripped by death from the household and society that she had been in. And then saying, "No, I'll follow you, mother-in-law. And maybe someone will let me glean from the fields." Wrapped up in that story is a whole piece of how would a woman be able to have support. Instead of choosing a new husband, she chose her mother-in-law. She chose someone new to be part of her family. In the story of the acceptance of the Ten Commandments, it's believed that literally what the Hebrew says of the Israelites being at the foot of the mountain is actually the Israelites being under Mount Sinai as the Ten Commandments are being revealed. Mountain held by God over the people. And the people say, yeah. We accept these, God. Or we'll die here. And in the Jewish holiday story right now, if you're reading Ruth, it's, I have been devastated, but I accept God. It is a conversion story, a orientation that many Unitarian Universalists may find something to value. Not to stay with the God that was holding a mountain over them to be their grave if they didn't follow what they were taught as a child, but instead to liberate their minds and say, no, I can orient myself as a matter of my choosing to the image of the divine that I am choosing, that I see reflected in the eyes of those I love. Coming into a Unitarian Universalist congregation or coming into any religion and finding, no, I can accept this. Or even for those who stay in their religion and grow in their story beyond what they were told, the shattered pieces perhaps of what they were told as a child that no longer hold together. They don't want the God of their childhood. And they come into maturity in accepting and weaving together the glittering pieces that make sense and leave out, as the story said, some of the pieces that no longer fit. Yes, folks, story matters. The stories that may bind us, or the stories that may liberate us. The stories that get reflected back to us. The stories that we knit together anew with our own imagination and with a sense of adventure of going forth. May you, if you are recovering, a survivor of violence of your past, if you have the deep grief within you, may you know this community is a place of story, a place of being loved into your new story, a place of reconstructing and not being among shattered pieces forever. May you find your way in religion as well, leaving beside the parts that don't fit and gathering up the ones that do, so that your story moving forward is supported by something humanistic and loving, something divine in a way that carries the glow of your heart and other hearts, as we have said with our readings. When our heart is in a holy place, it is blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, we need hymns like that. When we are down, we need to remember to be there for each other in helping to construct our glorious, glittering stories wherever we are in our journeys. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. As always, we appreciate the gifts and generosity that you have, and you saw during the announcements the story of our charitable giving of the month. If you would like to click on the link online or write in a check for that and the legal services and all the good that it does. But in whatever ways that you give with love, we receive with great joy, and we say, thank you. As I extinguish the chalice, I share the hopeful words of Brene Brown, who realized, I now see how owning our story and loving ourselves through the process of courage and finding, she would say, is the bravest thing that we will ever do by being vulnerable. Though I extinguish this light in this community space, may you hold it within you so that you can feel vulnerable in the times in which your story needs to be reinvigorated for you by the glow of all around. And may you also be a helper to others, just as we have a helper candle here, for all of us to be reconstituted into our stories and rebuilt along the way as we have had things happen. May you have a safe week to be vulnerable, to find yourself, to let, as Maya Angelou say, let that story out and not let it hurt by not being said. And may you come back again next time to this place of love and be embraced. Blessed be. Amen.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share